This is every single fight to make next after UFC Fight Night London, Edwards versus Brady. I've got all of the key fighters from that card on the screen right now. Some winners, some losers, and you may notice there is an empty box next to all of them, and that's where their next opponent's going to go, who I have hidden around the perimeter of the screen. I'll slowly reveal those opponents one by one as the video goes on and place them where they belong on the screen. Let's start straight away with the main event. Sean Brady absolutely bullies Leon Edwards. Don't let him bully us, son! Usman never bullied Leon Edwards, okay? There was no need for Leon Edwards' coaches to say that to him whatsoever. He wasn't even being bullied. He was being mildly outdone in a competitive matchup. Sean Brady bullied and finished Leon Edwards like he was absolutely nothing. It's the most dominant we've ever seen Sean Brady against the most difficult opponent he's ever faced. Sean Brady's ready for a title elimination bout and nothing less. A lot of people are saying, why not give Sean Brady the title shot? Maybe if JDM beats Belal Muhammad, which now I'm not so sure about, guys. Maybe if JDM can get by Belal Muhammad and become a champion, and they don't want to do a rematch with Belal Muhammad and JDM because he finishes Belal Muhammad in round 1 or 2 by TKO, who knows? Maybe then you would do Sean Brady versus JDM for the belt. If Belal Muhammad is still the champion, which I now am going to have to admit is going to happen, because how did Belal beat this man? I know styles make fights, and Belal's got amazing takedown defense, but still. Sean Brady is likely going to be taking on Shavkat Rakhmonov next in a title elimination bout. You can't give Rakhmonov a title shot. You just can't do it. I was saying that we have to do Sean Brady versus Joaquin Buckley. I know Buckley called out Sean Brady on Twitter, and I kind of rallied behind it for UFC 316. But we can't leave Rakhmonov out, okay? We have to include him somehow, and I think what you have to do is Sean Brady versus Shavkat Rakhmonov and Joaquin Buckley versus Kamaru Usman. So both Sean Brady and Joaquin Buckley get their big name. I know Usman is a much larger name than Shavkat Rakhmonov, but Shavkat Rakhmonov is also a massive name. He's got a massive following from his home country. He's got the whole country behind him. Sean Brady and Joaquin Buckley are the up-and-comers. They've got big wins, but they haven't captured the massive, massive fan base yet. Shavkat Rakhmonov has a massive fan base from his home country. Usman is, of course, a massive star and a very well-known fighter. So I think instead of doing Brady versus Joaquin Buckley and then Shavkat versus Usman, let's use both big names in Shavkat and Usman against individual rising, surging contenders in Sean Brady and Joaquin Buckley. So I would say do Sean Brady versus Shavkat, UFC 316, maybe 317, end of July end of June, in July. Keep them somewhat active and make this fight happen. Sean Brady took absolutely zero damage against Leon Edwards. He had a very, very, very easy fight against him. So I think he should be back in there in about 4 months, maybe 5 months if they want to make this fight happen in August. Who knows? And they should also do Usman versus Buckley, International Fight Week. That makes sense as well. Buckley's been looking for a fight for a while. Usman's probably going to be coming back soon unless he just wants to continue yapping for yet another year about other welterweight contenders while he does absolutely nothing in the division. But Sean Brady and Shavkat got injured recently. Sean Brady's going to need a little bit more time off. I say do Brady versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm shocked by how good Sean Brady looked. And I think this will be an interesting style matchup because we know Shavkat, he showed some weakness against Ian Gary. So this isn't a matchup where, maybe before you would say, Shavkat destroys. You can no longer say Shavkat destroys. Shavkat by whatever he wants. I honestly feel like he got fraud checked out of a title shot by Ian Gary. Even though he was injured and that's why he didn't get the title shot in the first place. And that's why JDM has now got the shot instead. It's not about that. It's that Shavkat lost his invincibility. If he goes out there and finishes Sean Brady, we're back on the hype train. We're massively back on the hype train. But I need to see him get another win because he's already been out for a very long time. When was Shavkat's last fight against Ian Gary? I feel like it was at the end of 2024, maybe October 2024, November, around that time. It's been 4 months already since then. Belal's fighting JDM in May. Are we going to be seeing Shavkat versus Belal Muhammad or JDM in October or November of this year? I ain't waiting that long. And I'm not having this guy sit out for a year after barely scraping by against an Ian Gary who took the fight on a few weeks' notice. I'm not having it. Sean Brady, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Usman versus Buckley. Winners get title shots. I don't care when they're going to get it. Maybe one of them has more impressive performance. I would say the winner of Brady versus Rakhmonov is way more deserving because, of course, Usman's coming off some losses. Joaquin Buckley, he has got some good wins, but how much do we really rate a Covington win at this point? You know what I mean? He does have some good wins, and he's put together some really good wins in a division. But I think Brady's beaten Edwards, or Brady beating Edwards, put him at the front of the queue right next to Rakhmonov. So these two, next one gets a title shot. Joaquin Buckley, Kamaru Usman. If Buckley wins, which at this point I'm going to have to assume because it feels like Usman, Edwards, and Covington were just filler welterweights until the new era arrived after GSP left. Even Woodley feels like he was just filler at this point in UFC history. It's crazy. The winner of that, if it's Buckley, he can be like the backup opponent and then he's guaranteed a title shot afterwards. So that's what I would do. For Leon Edwards, on the other hand, he lost. He got dominated. He didn't take a crazy amount of damage. You know? He's not going to have to take an entire year off. Like, oh my God, is Edwards ever going to be the same? I don't think this is going to be the kind of damage where he can't take a punch anymore. Like, he got ground and pounded quite a bit, but he didn't get... I don't even know if he got his nose broken. I'm sure he took some damage, don't get me wrong, but he's not injured from this fight. You know, he's not got a broken hand from what a war it was. He got completely destroyed and choked out and got little punches to the face in the process. No doubt he's going to be sore. I don't think we can see Leon Edwards sit out for that long. A lot of people are saying that they should do Leon Edwards versus Ian Gary. Schedules. You got to think about schedules. Ian Gary fought in November. He's going to be looking to come back soon. I would imagine Ian Gary is going to look to get on the June pay-per-view card, International Fight Week. Leon Edwards is not going to be ready for that card. I don't think we see Leon Edwards until August. That's what I'm thinking. Early August, fight night main event. I don't know what it's going to be. Honestly, Apex main event at this point. Versus, and hear me out, UFC 314 has a really good welterweight matchup, and I think this makes sense for the structure of the division. The winner of Gilbert Burns versus Michael Morales, which I'm going to go with Michael Morales in. I think Michael Morales is going to get past Gilbert Burns in a pretty competitive, close matchup. And I think that's a schedule that makes more sense in terms of the turnarounds that both of them are going to have. April, Morales versus Burns. The winner's looking to take on Leon Edwards in August. Maybe even September. I think we see Leon Edwards take a good 6 months to really think about what he's done. I don't know about thinking about what he's done, but to at least recalibrate himself and refocus himself on the game, because otherwise we could be looking at a very big slide for Leon Edwards. And I actually think that Michael Morales, if he does get past Burns, or even Burns, you know, that's a matchup we never got. Edwards versus Burns. They were around the division at the same time. We never got to see them take each other on. But if Morales beats Edwards, that's actually a pretty decent style matchup for Edwards. So I would do Leon Edwards versus Morales if he gets past Burns, and Burns if he gets past Morales. We move on to the co-main event. Carlos Ulberg, pathetic idiot, loser, frolicking around on the back foot, tapping at Jan Blachowicz' knee with his toes. Brutal stuff, all honesty. Really brutal. Forget the punches that Jan Blachowicz was landing. Forget him moving forward the entire time. Forget him sinking massive low kicks into the thigh of Carlos Ulberg's leg. Ulberg cut him on the eye once with his one like glancing jab that he was landing. And man, were Jan's knees damaged after that one. They really were. The toes of Carlos Ulberg were destroying the knees and the shins of Jan Blachowicz. Good Lord, it was brutal to watch. Carlos Ulberg gets past Jan Blachowicz, out busying him on the back foot for 3 straight rounds. When it's close, they don't go to octagon control. They don't go to pressure. They don't go to anything. They just give it to Ulberg. Tappy, tappy, tap. Give him Yuri Prohaska. I know this is going to be like, why you're rewarding him. But this is the matchup. We knew that this was the matchup that was going to go down. The winner of Blachowicz versus Ulberg was going to be taking on Yuri Prohaska. They gave the win to Carlos Ulberg. It was a very close fight. He did land a few more shots that I'm giving him credit for. I just thought Jan won the first and the third round. And I think close fights can have clear winners. But not in Jan Blachowicz's case. Ever. Can they ever be scored that way? He will forever have them against him in terms of scoring. And I reckon that Carlos Ulberg versus Jan Blachowicz is the fight that, or Carlos Ulberg versus Yuri Prochazka is the fight that's going to happen. You can't give Yuri Ankalaev. We know they're doing Ankalaev versus Pereira too in October in Abu Dhabi in 5 months. That makes sense, in my opinion. They're probably going to put Makhachev on that card as well. I don't know who against yet. We'll find out. But I reckon that's what they're going to do. They're going to put those 2 massive fights in Abu Dhabi in October. And Carlos Ulberg versus Yuri Prochazka can happen in the meantime. Maybe Carlos Ulberg versus Yuri Prochazka can happen on the same card. On the main card of the Abu Dhabi card. Around that time. So that if anything happens to where Pereira gets injured or Ankalaev gets injured, you could find an alternative matchup to make on that card in the meantime. Especially if Pereira ends up getting injured here and pulls out. Because Pereira knows that he's got to get this one back. And even if Pereira pulls out of this fight, if he gets injured or if he's sick and he doesn't want to gamble it in this massive, massive important matchup, you know the UFC are just going to be like, don't worry, Pereira. Take your time. You'll get a title shot when you're ready. You know what I mean? Because of what he did. He saved cards. He stepped up. He saved events. He delivered nasty KOs. And in which case we have Yuri on standby to take on Ankalaev in the meantime. So Ulberg, Yuri Prochazka on the same card as Ankalaev versus Pereira in October. That's what I would do. Plus, Yuri's finishing his degree. So, random side quest for Yuri, but he's finishing his degree. So, let's go for that. I think he should wait until October. Makes sense scheduling-wise. Who knows? Maybe they try and get this done in August, but just seems a little too soon, to be honest with you. I think they should wait and have it on the same card as the title fight. Moving on. Jan Blachowicz, the winner but loser of the co-main event. He needs to take on the winner of Nikita Krylov versus Dominic Reyes, which is a fight coming up soon. It might even be on UFC 314 as well on the prelims, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe UFC 315. I think it's on one of those pay-per-views on the prelims. Nikita Krylov versus Dominic Reyes. I think Nikita Krylov is one of the best light heavyweights in the division. Jan Blachowicz has a win over him, which is very impressive. I think he submitted him. If I'm not mistaken, I think he may have actually choked out a young Nikita Krylov a very long time ago. I'm trying to think of Nikita Krylov's matchups against the top dogs. I think he had a split decision against Glover Teixeira that he lost, but he arguably could have won. But I think he fell off of Glover's back at one point in one of the rounds, and Glover ended up on top and did a little bit of something, and they kind of gave Glover the round because of that. So I think he went to a split decision with Glover Teixeira. He had a very close and competitive 29-28 decision loss to Magomed Ankalaev. I believe on the same card of Jan versus Sterling 1 or 2, was it? I'm not sure which one it was. I think it was the first one. On the first Jan versus Sterling card, I'm pretty sure Nikita Krylov went to a close 29-28 decision loss to Ankalaev. And I think Jan Blachowicz choked him out years ago when he was very, very young. I reckon he beats Dominic Reyes. I think Nikita Krylov is one of the most underrated light heavyweights on the roster. And if he does, they should run back the rematch. If Jan Blachowicz wants to continue fighting, I can see Jan doing it because he's not taking a crazy amount of damage. He's putting wear and tear on his body, don't get me wrong. But, you know, if Jan was getting chinned over and over again and he wasn't taking punishment the same way, I'd be saying other things. But Jan Blachowicz is probably on a very good contract, making a lot of money. Even with a loss, I would imagine he's getting $250,000 to lose, maybe $250,000 to win. Maybe he earns like a $400K if he wins, 200 for 200. He's probably around that range. So he's still getting a good paycheck for losing. So I think he's going to stick around now that he's on this good contract and see if he can, again, build himself back up. Because Jan's in a position where he's had so many close competitive fights with the top dogs. If he's just coming off of a win at a time where Pereira's off a loss or Ankalaev loses the belt or, you know, Yuri comes off a loss to Ulberg or any of these situations happen, or even, you know, the winner of Khalil Roundtree versus Jamal Hill. If he's just coming off a win, there are big matchups in the future of Jan Blachowicz. So I think Blachowicz versus Krylov too. If Krylov gets past Reyes, maybe even the Reyes versus Blachowicz rematch as well could also make sense. It actually does make sense. But in that case, I'd maybe want, you know, something a bit more fresh. We could do Jan Blachowicz versus the winner of Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree. So Jan, stay active. Get back in there. put it on like an August or September card. I don't want to see Jan out for too long. We move on. Kevin Holland hit Gunnar Nelson with that 45-70. But he got saved by the bell, which means it went to a decision. But you know how active Kevin Holland wants to be, which means he's going to need an equally active welterweight opponent. An equally black and lanky welterweight opponent. It's Neil Magny. It just makes sense. Kevin Holland, Neil Magny. Magny's not ranked, so let's just put them against each other. I don't think Kevin Holland's in a position where he can be like, I need my ranked opponent. You know, there are welterweight contenders that arguably would deserve it more. I think the winner of a Bryan battle versus Orban Elliott. You've even got Jake Matthews, who's back on a win streak. He could get a big win and be in a position to call out a ranked opponent. You could even do Kevin Holland versus Jake Matthews. I just think Kevin Holland versus Neil Magny makes sense. I just see that as a co-main event of an Apex card. A good co-main event of an Apex card. You know what? These days, I see it as a main event of an Apex card. But I think Kevin Holland versus Neil Magny makes sense. I'd like to see them go at it, so I think it'd be an interesting matchup. I think Kevin Holland would win, but everyone's got to go by Magny at 170, and Kevin Holland hasn't done that. And he was at 170 for quite some time, you know, in between his middleweight stints of being submitted or held down for 5 rounds. So Kevin Holland versus Neil Magny is what I want to see. And Magny's anyone, anywhere, as soon as he can, looking to be active as soon as possible. So if Kevin Holland literally says, I want to be on that Canada card, UFC 315, I bet you anything Neil Magny would go, all right, put me on that Canada card against Kevin Holland. Ha! I farted and covered it up. At UFC 315. Kevin Holland, Neil Magny. Make it happen. I farted twice. We move on. Chris Duncan. Chris Duncan got a very good win against Jordan Vucenic. I've spoke to Jordan Vucenic. It won't happen again. The title run starts now. I sent him a picture of Charles Oliveira. He's better than this. You know? And then the next opponent's getting Rolling Thunder KO'd in 1 minute, tops. And we know that's going to happen. Okay, the title run begins for Jordan Vucenic. God. I promise he's going to be something in this sport, you guys. He's too talented not to be. Either way, Chris Duncan wins, chokes out Jordan Vucenic with a guillotine. Big upset win. He's had a few upset wins now. Even his last fight against Blachowicz was a nice guillotine submission upset win. He seems to be making a trend of this kind of victory, does Chris Duncan. So I think Chris Duncan should take on the guy that he called out, Terrence McKinney. I was going to try and find a more interesting matchup because in all honesty, Chris Duncan, I know you and Terrence McKinney have been going back and forth a little bit. You're kind of above that. Anyone else feel like Chris Duncan could easily be in there with a Matt Frevola? Or not a Dober yet maybe, but a Matt Frevola-ish type opponent, a Carlos Diego Ferreira or an Oral Bly. Like, I could easily see Duncan getting one of those matchups. Even though it's not the most compelling of matchups, Duncan's been putting together some wins. I think he only has 1 loss in the UFC. And it's to Manuel Torres, which isn't too bad of a loss. And he's put together some good, I think he's like 4-1 in the promotion now. So I think McKinney's a little bit selling himself short, but he called him out. He wants to match up. McKinney's called him out back. That's something that they've been calling for a long time. And McKinney's coming off some wins as well, even though they're against layups. Terrence McKinney versus Chris Duncan. It's a good matchup, an interesting matchup. A while ago, I would have said, McKinney easily beats Chris Duncan. But now I'm thinking, listen, you get to round 2, Duncan's guillotining you out cold. This is just how it's going to happen. So I'm not sure how that fight would go anymore. Chris Duncan, Terrence McKinney. Duncan's a lot better than we thought. And I think that's an interesting matchup. I just see this as an Apex card feature fight or a co-main event. God, I hate the Apex cards. Maybe they should do this on like the early prelims of a pay-per-view instead. But yeah, stay active, Chris Duncan. Get right back in there. You know Terrence McKinney's ready to go. International Fight Week prelims. That's the matchup I would make. Only because they called each other out. Otherwise, I would probably find a better opponent for Chris Duncan. And a different opponent for Terrence McKinney that could be a little bit more fun of a wild style matchup. You know what I mean? Maybe a Manuel Torres for Terrence McKinney. I know he's got a fight coming up soon as well. Maybe this weekend in the Mexico card. Who knows? I think so. I'm pretty sure I saw him on the card. Nathaniel Wood looked amazing against Morgan Charrier. Unsung hero of the card. I know there weren't many finishes, but Nathaniel Wood held it down for England. You know what I mean? There weren't many that were holding it down for England on that card, but Nathaniel Wood got an amazing win over Morgan Charrier. Normally, Nathaniel Wood gets hurt in fights. You know, he goes to war when he doesn't really need to. He fumbles a finish, and he nearly gets finished, but bounces back and gets back into the fight and makes it very close, but wins a 29-28 decision. This seems to be the storyline of Nathaniel Wood's career. This time, he swept the scorecards. He won 30-27. He again fumbled a finish, but some things just don't change, okay? But he's put together a great resume right now, and other than Naimov completely cheating against him in the featherweight division, I don't know if he has a loss. He beat Charles Jourdain. He beat Daniel Pineda. That's not that crazy of a win. But now he just beat Morgan Charrier, which is a very high-rated win in the unranked area of that division. He beat Andre Fili. He's put together somewhat of a resume, but he's missing those names, so he needs to get either a ranked opponent or someone who's going to get him ranked. I think Calvin Kattar. Listen, I've always been a nice promoter of the Calvin Kattar versus Edson Barboza matchup, but at this point, I understand that you don't really want to be paying them loads of money to be fighting each other. You kind of want to pay them the money that they're on, which is a very good contract. I would imagine Calvin Kattar's making about $150K to show, $150K to win, 140 for 140, 125, 125, something along those lines. Maybe Nathaniel Woods on 75, 75, 70, 70, something more around that region. You don't want to be paying Calvin Kattar, Edson Barboza if it's not to have the chance that a guy will make a name off of them. So I think they're going to give Kattar and Barboza individual different matchups. And Kattar hasn't got one right now. He lost to Yusuf Zalal. He didn't take crazy damage. He looked okay in the third round. He kind of looked like he found his rhythm a little bit. So maybe he wants to stay somewhat active. And I think Wood should stay active as well. Didn't take too much damage. Maybe he's sore. I'm sure his feet are sore. His hands are sore. He went for a 3-round fight. Don't get me wrong. But this isn't something where we're going to need 6 months off. I say August, late July. Maybe on the July pay-per-view, prelims, Nathaniel Wood versus Calvin Kattar. That's the matchup I would make in the featherweight division. We move on. Marcin Tybura robbed Mick Parkin. Brutal robbery. Very, very close fight, but I didn't think he won, but they gave it to Marcin Tybura. And Tybura, listen, man, he does his thing. You may think he's king of the blobs. Do you guys hear that? It's Shamil Gaziev! Blob off! 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 This is the matchup we've been waiting for. Who is the king of the blobs? Marcin Tybura versus Shamil Gaziev. Need I say any more? Need they eat any more? I need to see who the king of the blobs is at the heavyweight division right now. And this is the only matchup that makes any sense. Keep Marcin Tybura active. Get him back in there. And give him a fight against Shamil Gaziev. Maybe on the Abu Dhabi card in July. We know Tybura likes to stay active. We know Tybura likes to get in as many fights as he can. He's on a great contract. And he believes in himself. He keeps winning, for God's sakes. I don't know how, but he keeps doing it. Better than he gives off. Marcin Tybura, Shamil Gaziev, July, Abu Dhabi Fight Night card. I can see the main event being Piotr Yan versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I feel like they're doing Merab versus O'Malley too. That's what Merab seems to think, which means I'm seeming to think it as well. I think they're going to do Merab versus O'Malley too. I don't know what the co-main event is going to be on that card. But in the feature fight, Marcin Tybura versus Shamil Gaziev actually makes a lot of sense. What was I thinking of the feature fight, of the co-main event of that card, though? An equally pretty good fight. I just can't remember what I was going to put it as. Yikes. I don't know. There was a matchup I was thinking of. Surely there was a matchup I was thinking of. Like a Shara Magomedov versus... Who was I going to put Shara against? Shara Magomedov versus someone in the co-main event. And then Marcin Tybura, Shamil Gaziev in the feature fight. With a main event of Umar Nurmagomedov versus Piotr Yan. That's a great fight night card in Abu Dhabi. And you don't need much else on that card to keep it really good. So that's what I would do. I'd have a blob of the ages matchup of Marcin Tybura and Shamil Gaziev. Moving on. Lona Kavanagh got a big win over Felipe Dos Santos. There's an opponent, Rafael Estevan. I believe it is Rafael Estevan. He's coming off some wins. He missed weight in his fight against Charles Johnson. I can't remember who he beat in his last fight. I believe it was Jesus Aguilar. He beat him in a pretty competitive decision. But Lona Kavanagh versus him would be pretty good. He's not ranked, but if Lona beats him, he'll probably get number 15 or 14. And if Rafael Estevan wins, he will also get number 15 or 14 in the division. So that's how I would match up those two. Lona Kavanagh, Rafael Estevan. And yeah, I'm more excited for the blob-off than any of these matchups, though. I'll tell you that much for free. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.